welcome back. This is the Poet Is a Human with the Philosopher Dunamis on this week's episode number 51, Fight to Prove Them Wrong. Please be sure to hit that like button on your way in, and if you like us, consider subscribing to keep up with our episodes on YouTube and give us a follow on X.
And Fightcast is here to empower individuals to live healthier, master finances, pursue their dreams, and inspire others through self-awareness and global impact. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only, and not financial advice. Izzy Human, how you doing this week?
Not bad, man. Not bad. Just weird sleeping patterns, but I'm making it work. But we've been busy. Shout out to the team per usual. We're making things happen. And yeah, man, I don't feel too bad. Character building week, but not too shabby. How are you?
It's been good. It's been sort of a continuation of a continuation of last week, in the sense that I've been picking up hours at work. Thanksgiving's getting close. I think a lot has been kind of in preparation for that. There's been there's kind of a lot of birthdays happening. I have a couple of kids that have birthdays right around this time of year, and so it's just sort of busy with that, and then Thanksgiving, and then we have Christmas, and so yeah, just it's been good. It's been busy, and so it's been busy enough to not really. This whole week crept up on me,
Yeah.
how fast everything seems like it flew by.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I feel about the year. I was just talking to my friend the other day, and they were saying that it just seems like yesterday the ski lodge was open and it was closed, and now it's open again. And yeah, it's just like winter's literally like right here all over again. It's nuts, dude. It's nuts.
Yeah, so many places already they've had the Christmas decorations out, since the beginning of November, it seems like. And yeah, it's pretty incredible how fast these years fly by. And on that note, we're a week away from having done this for a year. I think our anniversary will be coming up here this next week, so that's
Wow.
kind of exciting too.
That is pretty exciting. Yeah, it's been one heck of a ride, dude. 1 year. And whew, yeah, guys. I think that's actually a good segue to go into our topic. And I don't think that we really had anybody that we wanted to or needed to prove wrong, or at least felt like. It might be a little loaded jumping into this right away, but proving them wrong. I thought about that today, and I was asking myself, what does that really mean to prove somebody wrong? And the general way of thinking about it, or at least my definition of what general would be in this sense, is like, we were talking a little bit off air of, I'm going to do this. And someone's like, well, did you think about X, Y, and Z? I don't think it's going to work, dude. And it's that, all right, well, hold my beer. I'll go ahead and prove you wrong. And then we'll go ahead and have this conversation after it's done. And I thought to myself, is there like a duality? Is there a duality with proving somebody wrong? Because on the one end, is it healthy to prove people wrong? Because are you proving somebody wrong in a healthy way, or are you just doing it to prove a point? You know what I mean? So it's just something I thought about. What do you think?
I think the duality part of that is interesting, because I think you could, if you're not careful, you can prove somebody right. you know,
True. True.
um, there's definitely that you have to worry about. When I was thinking about the topic this week, the frame of reference that I was coming at it from is more that if you have a purpose, if there's something that you really know that you're designed and destined to do, you have to get at a point where you don't really listen to the crowd, because the crowd's going to tell you that whatever you're trying to do is impossible, or that it's just really unlikely, or whatever negative thing that they have to say. And so I definitely think that you're onto something with there being negative aspects to it, or could be negative aspects to it. But in the original concept, at least, I'm thinking that it's more of a grit aspect of life to be able to say that this is something that you've determined that you're going to do. And, constructive criticism's great. I'm all for constructive criticism. If somebody comes along and tells me that, getting Rhode Island red chickens is a bad idea, that I probably want to consider other breeds of chickens, totally listen to them. No problem. Got no problem with that at all. If somebody comes to me, though, and tells me that my whole concept of the food system being broken is wrong and that, I'm going to fail at what I'm trying to do, that's not the energy that I want to listen to, I guess is what the way that
Mm.
I'm thinking about it is taking that super negative fear that will come into your life and tell you, that you can't do something, and and yeah, maybe not quite like hold my beer, but in
Mm.
in the same ballpark, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, definitely, man. And I see what you mean with that. That's definitely not an energy that I would want to be around. And I don't uh I don't really think anybody could argue with us about our food system being like perfect. I think that if you genuinely believe that, like, okay. You might as well just eat the artificial plastic fruit at Hobby Lobby. Fight me in the comments. I'm kind of messing with you guys. But yeah, man, and I think to myself too, with with this whole proving people wrong, and like really proving myself, like proving myself right. It like, man, I don't know. Like it's and I think the reason why I'm stuttering over this a little bit is because it's so open ended of a topic. Like I feel like it's probably one of the most open like topics that we had, that like I could go 1,000 different directions with this. So maybe I'll play this cop, you play that cop. But but proving things to myself, proving myself wrong, that maybe I don't have, this like addiction or whatever. Not saying that I have an addiction. An addiction could be literally anything, or proving myself right that, I could record these 3 songs. And I feel like the more I challenge myself and the more that I put myself in uncomfortable situations to grow, the more these challenges just become more of a natural process. And there's more it's just a quicker initiation into the flow state of that. So it's like when you get to that type of flow state with yourself and how you push yourself, how you examine, assess, then the rest of the world, when it's this, hey, I don't know if you can do that double backflip on that snowboard. It's not even like a, oh, you don't think I can do this? Like you don't think I can do this? It becomes a, I know I can do this. So, you just kind of look over at him, you're like, you think so? And they're like, yeah, man, I don't think you can do it. I'm like, yeah, fair enough. And then, you just kind of go. And even just kind of killing that in itself, like, I'm going to do this double backflip on the snowboard because I know that I can, not because you told me I couldn't. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
but again, what ends up happening inadvertently is you do prove them wrong, so you're still doing that in a way without doing it. And that's where I kind of wrestle with a little bit, Dunamis, is just ego's crazy. Like
Yeah.
ego lives in the past and lives in the future, but the soul lives in the present. So, how does that, like, how does the proving, fit into the soul and the moment, is, questions that I ask myself.
You've definitely yeah, this is definitely a vague generalized topic that could be taken all kinds of different ways. We could look at it very generically and pick it apart, or we could look at very specific scenarios.
Yeah.
I think that there is a problem with the the idea of always having to prove people wrong. So I think that the problem with the ego, to pull at the thread here, would be to say that I think that you can be overconfident, in yourself, think that you can do too much, and not really listen to people who are trying to give you good advice. So there's all sorts of negative aspects that could come from somebody who's, you know, that I would see a lot of that as personality flaws, but and I've known maybe one or two people like this. Just thinking back in my history, it's pretty rare. Usually when somebody's that confident, like above and beyond their own abilities, they learn, you know. Um, Not always the case. But I was looking at it originally from the other point of view, whereas more from like the imposter syndrome side of things, where it's like I really can do this thing, you know, but maybe I don't think so, and maybe I don't think so because everyone around me has, you know, if not outright told me that I can't do it, they've, you know, pretty clearly indicated that's not you know, maybe that I should try other things, right?
Right.
I should have a backup plan. I should you know, it's never out in the open. Nobody will ever just come out and tell you no, you can't do that, you know, or you're going to fail. But
Right.
it's all that other stuff.
You see what they do too, and I think, like you said, they don't have to tell you directly that, hey, maybe you should have a backup plan, but just see what people do. And this person may work this job, this person may do this, and you get a lot of the standard responses. You pay the bills, take care of the family, and those are all good things. Those are all great things, and there's no discredit to anybody working, for somebody or with somebody or anything like that. It's never been about just go run your own business. It's just more about what you do this stuff for. And when you have conversations with those guys, like, well, and my grandparents were, probably the biggest culprits because they were very old school. So this music stuff to them, this whole run your own business thing, is very taboo to them because, just um you know uh, uh black grandparents, y'all. And it's just like, your own business, what are you doing? Like, you think you're gonna make it in this world, with your own business kind of thing. And and I think that's where, a lot of that proving, came from. And, like, even like talking to my grandma at times when I would be down south to visit her, she would, I don't think she was ever joking when she asked me, but she would be like, when are you gonna get a real job? And I
Yeah.
would always say, Grandma, this is my real job. Like, I do this for real. This is my living, and it may not seem like much now, but it's everything that I ever wanted. And every time I give her the same response. And I think that she kind of waits to see if I give her a different response, to see if my attitude has changed towards the business. But every time it's been the same response. And my mom was like that too, God rest her soul. And eventually my mom became my biggest fan, and she was telling everybody that I was going to be a famous rapper more than I was, and I wasn't really telling anybody at all. It just became my mom was the person that was going to tell you what it was. And now my grandma's the same way, my grandpa, and God rest his soul too. But I made a lot of believers, and I think a lot of that just had to do with me being consistent and just staying true to my word. And eventually people believe you, or they just get to a point where they can't deny it.
That's exactly it. I'm glad that you mentioned being undeniable because that's kind of, I think, the way to do it is not, you know, you talk about how you can prove people wrong the wrong way, and I think that's completely possible. I think that you have to have that mentality going into whatever it is that you're doing, your purpose, that you have to believe in yourself and you have to get over that imposter syndrome
Mhm.
on your own. You have to close the gap. There's a Ira Glass was a writer, I believe, for PBS or NPR or one of these, public things, and there's a video out if you Google this called "The Gap," and
Mhm.
this little video or radio clip where he's talking about, you get into something, whatever that field is. In his case, it was writing, because you have good taste. And when you start doing something, he describes imposter syndrome basically in this thing. He says you work, you create something, and it's not any good, and you can tell that it's not any good.
Hmm.
And he explains that a lot of people give up, but you work through it in order to close the gap. So you you have to do a lot of work, creative work, and you have to suck at it for a while, and you work on closing the gap. But at some point, what you're doing is you're also teaching yourself, you're building confidence in yourself, and you're making something, uh, eventually with practice, you can get really good at anything it is that you practice a lot of. And at the end of that, you're ultimately going to have something that's undeniable. You put that 10,000 hours in or more. And in my case, it might just be raising sheep and chickens and selling really good food. But I'm definitely not going to let people tell me that it's not possible. I'm not going to let people tell me that I'm not going to succeed, that I'm not going to be able to grow anything, or any of that kind of stuff. And it doesn't have to be that, and it doesn't have to be music. It could be anything. But if anything, I wanted to come at that that spirit that wants to discourage you.
Hmm. Yeah, I just flipped this switch, man, and it just shuts off. It just shuts off, and I think a part of me is definitely delusional in a way, but I wouldn't say that negatively. I don't think that there's a negative connotation that I associate with being delusional in this space. I just feel that I'm isolated in a healthy way to really formulate these thoughts and put strategy behind it. And not only that, be around my people and just be isolated from those projections. And they're so loud. They're so loud. They're in our face all the time, man. I mean, whether you're taking a break and you're watching Netflix or any kind of media, you're always seeing people that quote unquote are more successful than you, or at least that's what you think. That's what that's how it's perceived. And it's we I've talked to a few friends about like systemic racism and things like that. And we actually switched it. And I don't think that it's necessarily that. You guys can fight me in the comments if you want. But it's more of ideologies, ideological supremacy. Shout out to Shaggy for that term right there. Coin.
Yeah.
We're gonna coin that bad boy. But the ideological supremacy that just that this world is kind of built on, the status and all of this, the hierarchies and what have you. It's in your face all the time. If you don't shop from Maybelline, or if you don't get your makeup from Ulta, if you don't buy Givenchy, or if you don't get this specific type of ashtray, then everything else is just less than that. Or you get your clothes at Goodwill, you're below that, you're less than that. And I watch a lot of these Fortune 500 companies and a lot of these CEOs, and a lot of these guys all come from humble beginnings, and a lot of these guys now, they may have their nice things, and as there's nothing wrong with having nice things. I have been shopping Civil Regime for over 10 years now. Okay, so I understand, I get it, and I like a lobster roll. But I also will, for sure, if there is a deal on a lobster tail, but you bet your bottom dollar, I'm not going to spend $25 on a lobster tail. If it's $10, I'm going to get it. But a lot of these guys will say that, like, man, listen, I don't go out and blow my money. I've got this set up, I've got this set up, I've got this set up, I've got this set up. Rich people stay rich not by blowing a bunch of money. They stay rich by investing their money. Make the money work for you. You don't work for the money. And I feel like these gyms are just right in front of us, but it's like it's discouraged anymore now to be a business owner or to even think about your own entity. Like, it's discouraged to make your own t-shirt, and you may just only want to make like a couple $100 a month, but all of the resources are right there in front of us to do it.
Well, exactly. I think that the reason it's discouraged is because all of success, the money, all of that, it comes from the production of goods, not the consumption of goods, right?
Mm.
And what you're fed, this idea that rich people drive this kind of car, wear this kind of clothes, do these kinds of things, they're all consumption based. They want you to focus on the consumption of rich people, not on the production of rich people.
That's quotable. That's very, very quotable. I wish I could just pause this and post that on social media because that's intense, Dunamis. Can you repeat that for the crowd?
Yeah, yeah. They want you to focus on the consumption of rich people. You know, the one thing that we can't have. They don't want us to pay any attention to the production of rich people, but we all have the ability to produce. We have the creativity of the creator of God inside of us.
Mm,
And running a business is about producing. It's about taking what you have, what you can make with your own two hands, direct to the people. You're just going to service the people directly with your goods and services. And that is wealth. That is being rich. It's not about money. It's about having that business and being able to interact directly with your customers, having those relationships. And that's what they don't want you to have.
mm. You know what I just thought about is this 2 3 years that I've been running this business, and you and I doing our thing too. I haven't thought about failure. I haven't. And I'll think about everything else. It might be just some other things that creep up, but when it comes to this business and it comes to our podcast and it comes to everything that we're doing and all of my guys are doing, I don't think about failure with us. And I just like had that eureka moment where I feel like I've even broken that cycle within myself. And again, I have other doubts. The song may not be that good, or should I drop the track, or should I set this up for a project, or should I just put it out as a single, or should I put this ad lib on? All that extracurricular stuff, but not once that I think that doing music was a bad idea or running a business was a bad idea. And I was actually thinking and asking myself while you were talking, what would I do if I wasn't doing this? And it was very easily visualized that I would be running up a wall, driving myself insane, mad at how close I was to really making something happen. And now here I am. And that feeling, just for that split moment, drove me to the asylum. And I don't ever want to think that again. And that is exactly why I don't think about it at all. I've got it in my YouTube channel that if you had a plan B, you never had a plan A. And, people, you can fight me in the comments about that. But seriously, though, like I feel that that's the type of intensity that you need to have with everything that you do. And you don't have to wake up guns blazing or anything like that, but wake up and move with intention. Just be confident in yourself. That imposter syndrome is alive and well in all of us. And I think that we all exhibit some sense of imposter syndrome at some point in our lives, whether it be it could be as simple as I don't have 50 cents in my pocket. Oh, shoot, I do have 50 cents in my pocket. That's how minute it is. I'm joking when I say that, but up into the bigger things as well, where we feel discouraged, or we see people do things more, smoothly than us. And we just, again, the consumption versus the production of it, the work that it took to be smooth. It's not going to happen overnight. Rome was never built in a day. But all that to be said, yeah, just even that shift in the focus, man. Wow.
If we think about what it is we can make, every single one of us can make something. And it might be a hobby. It might not be, for me, I haven't even had a chance to really get in and start doing what it is that I love, but I already know how much I am going to love. Pruning trees in particular, I think, is something that has me the most excited. But working with animals, growing things, pruning trees, this is all going to be a big part of my future. And at the same time, it's basically going to start out like a hobby, and I'm not going to be any good at it for a while. And because of that, and because of my age too, I mean, there are all these things that are knocks against me. And so it's probably pretty clear from the title that I've had a lot of people tell me that this is a bad idea, you know, but
Really?
just yeah, I have. I mean, not necessarily so openly as that, but yeah.
Sure, sure. That surprises me, man. Because honestly, I don't think that we've really talked about that so much. I think that we've talked about just what it would take to do this. And man, even again, honestly, it's like I remember us, be close to a year, and we were talking about this and all these conversations that we had in the very beginning, and you're doing it. That's the proof is in the pudding at this point. I just big ha-has. It's just been big ha-has this week too, a little bit, because I'm getting to see everybody, all of my friends, really start to become the people that they've always wanted to be. Maturity and just everything that they're doing. Shout out to my boy Seth. Seth and I, we've known each other for about 5 years now, and when I first met Seth, he was 19 years old and he was working at Tire Choice, Mr. Tire. We were both there together as managers. And I remember him even saying, dude, one day I'm going to have my own mobile mechanic shop. I'm going to have a wife, I'm going to have my family, and I'm not going to work with anybody anymore. I was in the same field of I'm going to run my own business, I'm going to make my music. And it seems like it's so far away then until you get to it. And then you look and you're like, man, it just seems like yesterday I was wearing black dickies and an oversized work mechanic shirt, getting oil all over my hands and had stains for weeks. And now it's just not like that anymore. And it's such a blessing, dude. It's such a blessing, and it's so easy to take that for granted when you start to compile a new list of tasks in this field, just remembering that this is where you wanted to be, and this is kind of where God wanted you to be too, in a way. And I don't know, I can't really speak on behalf of the God thing, because I don't know, like, and maybe help me out with this a little bit, Dunamis. Like, when you think about God and you think about us as humans, how how much control do you think God has in that sense? And I guess this is kind of like a weird loaded question, but I guess what I'm asking is, when somebody sets their mind to do something, whether it's good or bad, how much control do you think God has in that? And this is an extreme kind of thing, because somebody could be like, "Hey, I want to be like a serial killer."
Yeah, I think that I mean, my belief is that God gives us free will. So in that sense, you could say he has no control. And
Mm.
I think that, I mean, and people are gonna probably have Calvinists up in here
Oh Lord.
arguing arguing the predetermination and all this different stuff. But I think just because even though God knows what we're gonna do ahead of time, right? He already knows what we're going to do. He still lets us do it. He allows us to make the decision. And so, in that sense, I think that it's entirely on us. And I love the fact that we are talking about, you know, people and their desire, what they've imagined that they want to do, and then carrying it out, with Seth. And I think that I think that's the real pathway to happiness. And there was a time in my life when, for my kids, I wanted to prescribe their future to them.
Mm.
I wanted to tell them, you know, do good in school and go to college and meet someone in college and you do things this particular way. And as I've continued to grow older myself, I've realized how foolish all of that is. And I just hope now, and we've talked a lot about this, but I just hope now that my kids find something that they love, that they enjoy, and that they're good at, and that I can encourage them along that path. And there are still things that I'm thinking that I'm going to continue to learn into my 40s, 50s, and 60s. I started woodworking when I was young with my grandfather, who was a carpenter,
Hmm.
and did it for a summer, but really did not continue it much beyond that, but I really, really want to get into woodworking myself.
Hmm.
And I keep thinking about welding, and I don't know. I either if one of my boys learns how to weld, that would be great. But if not, I might just have to pick that up myself and learn how to do some metal fabrication. But I think any of these types of skills, whatever it is, it's something that sounds interesting to you. You should learn how to do it, whether you use it professionally or not. I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody learning how to make beats or learning how to rap, even if they're not going to do it professionally.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with people raising chickens as a hobby, just to have some eggs on the side. So all this stuff is it's like life should be a buffet where you can add what it is that you want to it. And when people tell you, just to tie it back into what we're talking about, when people tell you no, that doesn't fit, you know, you're a programmer, you're a software engineer, you shouldn't be, wanting to go out and build a barn out of, you know, wood and you know you're I'm
Yeah.
wanting to make sauerkraut, you know what I'm saying? I'm wanting to learn
Yeah.
to get into fermentation and whatnot, and it doesn't fit. And people will tell me it doesn't fit, and it's like, well, it's my life. So I think that's kind of the key is to take control of your life at some point. You just have to take it. You just have to take
You,
it.
you know what gets me is when you think about the things that we're doing, and you think about the things that our ancestors did, or even our parents did. This isn't anything new. This isn't something that's like lo and behold here. We're just going back to our roots. And I feel that a lot of the fear from people, more than anything, has to do with time. If I had to really chalk it up to give it a common denominator, my own personal opinion, I feel that time is the number one thing that people fear the most, and that's why you get those projections and you get the actions of people. It's because they just don't feel like they have time to do certain things. They dedicate 8 hours to this, and then there's the you got to do this, you got to do this. It might be a kid or a sporting event or a parent teacher, whatever it is, and I again going back into this delusional state that I live in because I hardly know what day it is anymore. And the only reason why I remember what day it is when you and I have to do our podcast and record and like really just like the and yeah like the meet like I don't know like we've got like Google Meets and stuff like that, but that's when time is like applicable. Other than that, really, what is time? It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not worried that it's early and I'm making this song. I'm worried about finishing the song. I'm not worried about if the sun comes up. I'm not trying to beat the sun. If anything, I would love to make music while the sun's coming up, that kind of deal. But time, man. And I learned time, money, and trust, and not in that order in particular when I worked at Midas. Shout out to Midas because I've taken that principle with me since then because it really does apply in everything. Time, money, and trust. When you think about that, time, money, and trust. But time is such a special thing because this man-made construct of time is one thing, but what time actually means and what it does are two completely different things. This man-made time I feel was used to manipulate us into feeling like we didn't have enough time. We only have 24 hours in a day. I don't have time to do that. And I'm getting older and that kind of thing. Just again, you're putting things into the universe and these things are happening to you and you don't even realize it. You don't even realize it. And I have stopped completely, and I put it a lot into my songs. Is I always talk about breaking that hourglass. That's one of my favorite go-to lines in my song is breaking the hourglass, watching the sand spread flat because time doesn't exist. The type of time that they want us to operate on actually does not exist, and the only reason why it exists is because we choose to let it be in our lives. And not that days aren't important and not that a schedule is not important, but your schedule is important. The dates that matter to you are important. So the more control that you give to yourself or you give back to yourself, the more you realize that all of these things are just a part of this cycle. And it's not even a cycle that I mean, yeah, we created it, but it was already like it was a selection at a Kmart or something like that, and it was on sale.
It's all this talk about time, man. It had me thinking about a meditation that I actually had here recently on
Mm,
compound interest.
okay.
And you think about the invention of interest and having to pay interest and how these things work. And interest is man's invention, but the idea of what I was trying to do was think about whether there was natural corollaries to interest in nature. And what was crazy was I know we're kind of off on this time thing now, but it's you really piqued my interest because I was thinking about how a tree grows
Mm,
and how that if you own land and you own trees on that land, it's like the sooner I plant those trees, it's like the sooner I invest in the stock market because those trees are going to grow and they're going to grow a certain percentage every year. And so, and if I have a flock of sheep, for example, and those sheep, have two babies every year or whatever it is, that you will see multiplication and growth in nature in the same ways that you can see it happen in a portfolio, and you can see the same kind of compound interest happening. And that's sort of what I'm excited to learn about doing. And I think that's part of what they have taken away from us with the way time is used and reflected, because the passing of time is important. Seasons are important. There's a whole natural aspect of time
right.
which makes sense, but it's been co-opted for the 8 to 5, you know, uh, Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week or whatever it is, so that you can trade your time, which is infinitely valuable, for dollars, which used to be correlated to a weight in gold and instead is now just being inflated away. The money that you work for, that you trade your hours for every day, every week, those dollars, the actual value of those dollars is being vacuumed out from under you by the government on purpose, and it's been happening since 1913.
Yeah. And then the fact that the government controls the money, of course they're going to tell you go make that money. Go make that money. Yeah, absolutely. Go trade your time. Dude, you hit us with another quotable. Trading time for money. And people have put more value in, I mean, I guess the minimum wage dollar, and they found that that was more valuable. And with you, it's like the opposite. It's you're doing what you have to do. You're doing what you have to do in order to continue to build structure in this dream that is in front of you. This is like your reality is different. It's you're not looking at the things that you're doing as some hobby or some downtime type of thing. You have rhyme and reason, and a lot of people just go through the motions. And I don't know if it's really giving up per se, but when you've reached maybe certain points of your life where you become comfortable and the path of least resistance is more applicable in your area, I mean, you can't really knock it, in some areas. I mean, I'd imagine me being 70 years old in some ways, just being like, yeah, no, forget all that. Nah, we're good right here.
Yeah.
Like if I've been going on the same cruise for 20 years, I don't think I'm going to switch it up. I think I'm going to go on the same cruise. But I digress in that realm. But I mean, I can understand that, just because because on the one end of that too, I'm doing what I love to do. So if you were to, have me trade this for something else, like I would say that you were, out of your mind for sure, especially because I worked so hard to get here in that space. But like I've traded a lot of other things or I've traded music a lot more times than it's been the other way. You know, because of the
Yeah.
jobs and just the bills that were in front of me, and the debts, and just again the fear, the doubt, the like I can't just go make a song right now and make $1 million. I've got to go do this. So in the meantime, this music will always be here. But now that the music is here, I, what? Like there's no tire choice that sounds attractive. There's no Midas that sounds attractive. There's nothing. You know what I mean? And uh, shout out to my dude Seth, because honestly, if I needed to go make a few bucks, I would go work with my dude who owns his own business.
Totally. Yeah. And I can tell you, as somebody who I have done just about any job you could possibly think of, and I went from working any sort of odd jobs to make money to having a really solid career for a stretch. And now basically I'm sort of working one of those regular jobs again for the time being. But I think what you said is key and is important in that I'm the job is not the end goal. So there was a stretch of my life where when I was younger where I would work, in pest control or working at a gas station or whatever it was, and that was it. Like I didn't have a vision beyond that. There was no better idea coming along, and that's not a good place to be in. So
Mm.
if you're in that place, and I can't say that I am anymore, but if you're in a job that you hate and you don't see anything better coming after it, that's again where I would go back to where we had the episode on designing your reality, because it really just takes imagining what it is you like to do, what you would want to do. It's not, just thinking about it isn't going to make it happen, but that's how it starts, right?
Yeah, defining and refining. Absolutely. That's why I feel that the whiteboard is really important. The journaling is really important. When you write these things down, they physically exist in the world. So what you do with those words now is on you. But again, it helps with that formula. And I've seen that a lot. Shaggy has had a whiteboard for several years, and I just got a whiteboard here less than a year ago, and I've noticed just how much production has been done because of the board. And there's something satisfying about erasing something off of a board, knowing that you got the task done, and then writing another task on there. Same thing with crossing something out on a Google Drive, or same thing cross something out on your notebook. It's just something that's really pleasing and rewarding about doing that. And man, another thing I'll say too is, when it comes to work, when it comes to this work, the days off are a little are far less, because it doesn't feel like work. It just feels like it's just like I get paid to live, and
Hmm.
that's pretty, that's a, again, that's another one of those things where I throw that into the thought loop of getting paid to live and giving thanks. And man, I wouldn't have it any other way, dude. I wouldn't.
Yeah, that's how oftentimes it can be. So our I think I had said here not too long ago that our purpose is tied to some kind of work. You know, you grow up and there's something that you enjoy to do, but it's some kind of work. It's not necessarily a job, but if you're performing music in front of people, that takes work. It takes effort. It's not easy. Um, I can tell you, as the times that I led worship, or the times that I played in front of people, there's a lot of energy that you put out when you do that, right?
Hmm.
And it's the same thing with if I was a carpenter, if I made cabinets. Now, the trick is it has to be something that you love doing. And if it's something that you love doing, then you're not working. It's more like you're playing and you're getting paid to do it. That's That's why so many people dream of being football players or basketball players or musicians, because you're really just playing, you're doing something that you love to do. It could be that way though with it could be that way with welding. It could be that way with woodworking. It could be that way with in my case, when I imagine what it is that I absolutely want to do the rest of my life, it has a lot to do with a porch swing, some animals, some gardens. You know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
just where I see myself. And that's the cool thing too, because instead of trading now my time for money, I can let time compound the animals and the plants on my land and pay me. So that's kind of the point that I want to get to, and that's at least
Mm,
my idea and my vision is I want to. I know there's work involved. It's not just sitting around not doing anything all day, but I want to be able to feed these animals, feed the land, do the work, and as a payment, I know that the land will multiply for me. So I've been getting all these great ideas that we're going to share here, man, in future episodes about silvopasture is a word that I may have said here previously, but it's pasture, so grass that you're feeding animals with, and silvo meaning trees. Basically, it's a combination of pasture and forest, and I want to have you know pecan trees potentially, mesquite trees,
mm.
apple trees, mulberry trees, all kinds of different. As an example, a mulberry tree is a small tree, and the fruit is a favorite of chickens, from what I understand. So
Right.
there's all these added benefits, just in addition to not just shade, but I plan on getting timber, and I plan on getting additional nitrogen into the soil by chopping and dropping leaves, as well as nuts and fruit. And it's uh, it's going to be an interesting experiment. You know, I I really don't completely know what I'm doing, but I'm also not afraid to look stupid for a while. And I think that I'll probably be successful enough to make some food for my family, and hopefully fail enough to learn and adapt and make changes. And yeah, I mean, I know that there's parallels in everything in music and in what you do. I think that for me the whole proving them wrong thing is was not meant to at least be a stick it to them kind of a thing. But yeah, it's important. I've said it before. It's important to remain humble and teachable. So if
Mhm.
if you ever get to that point where your attitude is I know it all and I'm just going to show everybody and prove them wrong, you probably end up proving them right a few times.
Yeah. And, you know, I do want to say this because it wasn't always like that, and I'm kind of glad that I'm bringing this up towards the end. I kind of set that up a little nice for myself over here, doing a pat on the back. I did not feel like that all the time. And, there are still times where I still battle with that a little bit. Somebody made the joke that Ohio is stuck in the 80s. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that because where I live, you go to that grocery store, yeah, it's like it's the 80s with new food. Uh but shout out to the 80s babies. But man, I grew up in a really nice town, man. I grew up in the suburbs of Lima, Shawnee, and I grew up with a lot of the same people. I went to the same school my entire life, went to the same district. Not much changed. That was very fixed, as a kid. But as a kid, when you grow up with these guys, there is that competition. There is an ego that gets built because, you're all growing at different rates. So the high school came around and there were two guys, again, I'd known for a very, very long time. And it was summertime. we come back, and these guys are yoked, quote unquote yoked, like the biggest. And I did not remember them like this at all. So I'm thinking to myself, how are they juicing in high school? But creatine was the new big thing that was going on while I was a freshman in high school.
Okay.
And yeah, so creatine was big, and I started taking creatine too. And I didn't get big. I didn't get big off of creatine. I think for me, it was I just needed to work harder. I needed to work harder. I was 171 pounds, and I had a very, very high metabolism. I played defensive line at 171 pounds, and I also played a fullback. And I'd like to think that I did pretty decent. But for whatever reason, Dunamis, that that competition, it's like it's slow. It's still there. It's still there. And I don't know if it's because of certain traumas that I had where after I got into my car accident at 15 and I was ready to leave, I felt like maybe a charity case in a way, or maybe just people looked at me different, and for whatever reason, and I don't know, man. Like, and ever since then, with this music stuff, I always felt like there were a lot of people that made music in Lima. And in my personal opinion, I always thought that I had more talent, and I always thought that I was better prepared. But these are my own opinions. And it just felt like I was always overlooked in that scene. And I never got that kind of credit that I wanted from those guys. And it became this very, very hard obsession of Dear Lima, Dear Lima, Dear Lima, Dear Lima. And it got to a point, man, where I was listening to some of these tracks, and I didn't know who I was writing the song for. I didn't know if I was writing this for me, for clarity, or if this was just God telling me that my trauma wasn't healed.
Hmm.
But I soon got that answer, and it was that my trauma wasn't healed. And now, instead of it being this competition and me competing with anybody at all, this is just a classic man in the mirror conversation that I have. But with music, man, music is a sport. It is. And I think it is important for you to have that confidence and put that confidence in your songs. It's not everybody's going to do that for you. And I think that it is important to have that grit, like you had mentioned earlier, to have the audacity and the tenacity to speak to yourself so kindly. And I think that that's okay. But again, it's just the duality, like we mentioned in the very beginning, of proving them wrong, and what that means, and your clarity on that as well. And I think we also did a pretty good job of bringing that back around. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, but I definitely wanted to say that I do still have those moments. I do very much have those competing moments where it's me versus somebody else. But it's very few far in between anymore now. And I would say, just being honest, 8 times out of 10, it's me in that mirror.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we have to do this for the right reasons. We have to do all this for God, for ourselves, for our family, and for our community and the people around us, and eventually for the world at large. That's why we need to do these things. So
Yeah.
I think that yeah, the motivation has to be right. And man, this has been we did a great job, I think, of bringing this back around. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we did. We did. I know we got a few more, and I do want to take this time to shout out my hometown, Lima, Shawnee. I do really appreciate the place that I came from, and I had a really good community of people and a good network. And ultimately, I was able to take my talents to Urbana University, play football there, and where I soon realized that I wanted to be a musician for the rest of my life, and I had the courage to take that next step. And hasn't been the smoothest ride, but one thing I do know is I know how to surf, and I think that's the biggest takeaway. No matter how big the wave is, sometimes you just gotta get on your board and you gotta go with it, or have the courage to, just say, "Hey, this isn't my wave," and let somebody else surf it. we put emphasis a lot in our business is letting people be the heroes of their role. There are a lot of things that Gabe specializes in that I don't. You are, tech stack guy, like you're senior dev dude, like you could, I'm sure, like vernacular the crap out of me with some things. But like you said earlier, like just always being willing to learn and just always being a student to life. God is really the teacher with all of this. And as soon as you stop listening to God, man, I feel like you just stop listening to yourself. And I think that's a really scary place. And I do see where, people get lost in that sauce, and takes me to an adage, a wise man learns from his mistakes, and a wiser man learns from another man's mistakes so he doesn't make those mistakes at all. And that's the biggest key for me now in these days is seeing this, like being here for 34 years and seeing these top businesses and seeing the music industry and seeing the rise and fall of it and seeing what not to do. And I ultimately thank God for, one, giving me the patience to be able to like see this through and watch all of this develop so I could be the best version of me, so I can service my people properly, so we can ultimately all get there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it helps to have a little bit of foresight and be prepared.
Amen.
It's great episode again, man. I can't wait to do this again next week. We're gonna have the 1 year anniversary episode here coming up. So
longevity.
Yeah, we're gonna have to fight for longevity next week. And until then, man, never give up the fight.
Never give up the fight.
You could try to play it, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. Looking for change, looking for pain. Pulling a mob, pushing a train. I'll never stop, stick to a lane. Pick up the pieces and go rearrange. I'll be the best above all the rest, put me to the test and expect nothing less, your check is I'm chess, what's happening next, yeah. He got the venom, a tangible weapon, no coming in second. This life is a lesson, he got a new engine from pain, that's a blessing. New focus, no guessing, just bold and obsession. All in his possession, you got their attention. I'll leave an impression and take a redemption. Just kill, no discretion, your mind is a weapon. 11-11, it's time for progression, You could try to play it, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me. So he's been looking for somebody who could save him, instead of searching inside for what they gave him. A strong will, strong mind causes mayhem. We could change the world, change times, rearrange them. Staying on pace, running the race. Life is a chase, I don't want a place, I wanna be first. Work till it hurts, dehydrated thirst till I'm in a hearse. High ambitions in the right mind can take you so far. It's like you lived a few lifetimes. Take off from a break off from the weak minds, they can stay soft. You can change lives, you create thoughts, never waste time. You got one shot, you got one life, better pop off. What do you like? Make a dream job. No 9-5, no mean boss, just my life and free thoughts. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me.